The official records will state that I was chosen for this mission because of my composure, my unimpeachable record, and my reputation for objectivity. The truth, which I am only now willing to admit, is that my superiors thought my dry humor would keep the crew calm in the presence of creatures as unpredictable as humans. Yes, humans, the fragile bipeds who still rely on combustion engines, who eat meat compressed between bread and call it culture, who produce moving images of their own misfortunes and call it reality television. We regarded them as little more than clowns in a cosmic circus. I, in particular, felt certain they could provide us no true surprises. How wrong I was. The central task seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. Travel to the outer arm of the spiral, locate the blue and green world, select a specimen, and begin the testing sequence. Humanity was flagged as primitive, technologically noisy, but strategically negligible, a planet so distracted by its own consumer habits that it barely noticed the universe pressing in on it. I remember thinking, as the assignment was delivered, that this would be a welcome reprieve from the exhausting intricacies of interstellar politics. A holiday of sorts, only with fewer drinks and more scalpels. My crew felt the same. We joked as we prepared the equipment, trading theories about which of Earth's indulgences was most absurd. One suggested their fascination with microwave burritos, a food so untrustworthy it required packaging louder than its flavor. Another nominated the curious practice of devoting entire networks to competitions of baking, singing, and survival in fabricated wilderness. I added that perhaps the greatest mystery of all was their devotion to emojis, tiny symbols used to replace words they already knew. We laughed until our air sacs ached. There was comfort in such laughter. It reinforced our certainty of superiority. When the shuttle descended through Earth's night atmosphere, we located our target with minimal effort. He was alone near a riverbank, sitting by a dwindling fire, his posture relaxed, his gaze fixed on the flames. Male, middle-aged by their reckoning, broad of frame, yet unremarkable in appearance. His clothing bore signs of long wear, his boots caked with mud, his hands scarred from use. At first glance, he seemed the perfect example of a solitary wanderer, an expendable unit whose absence would raise no alarms. He chewed slowly on something wrapped in foil, eyes reflecting the firelight. My navigator whispered that it must be one of those burritos. We suppressed more laughter as the paralysis beam enveloped him. He did not struggle. He did not cry out. He simply tipped backward into unconsciousness, the foil still clenched in his hand. The abduction proceeded without issue. We secured him in the containment chamber, activated the restraints, and initiated the sedative drip. His vital signs pulsed steady, his breathing even. I noted with some disappointment how anticlimactic the moment felt. No chase, no resistance, merely the acquisition of another primitive mammal. I dictated into the log, specimen collected, estimated intelligence, moderate, estimated threat, negligible. The crew applauded, and I allowed myself the smallest flourish of arrogance. It was during transport that the first shadow of unease crept across my confidence. Not fear, of course, only unease. His eyelids flickered despite the sedatives. His fingers twitched as though testing the restraints. I leaned closer, certain it was reflexive, but when his lips curved faintly upward, as though at a private joke, I felt the first prick of doubt. I dismissed it quickly, reminding myself that humans often display involuntary facial spasms. They smile at inappropriate times, even in pain. Nothing to worry about. Upon arrival at the vessel, I ordered the preliminary scans. The chamber filled with sterile light, sweeping through his neural pathways, cataloging the crude architecture of his brain. My analysts muttered about anomalies in the readings, but anomalies were expected in a species that still argued about whether it had reached the moon honestly. I instructed them to proceed, ignoring the faint impression that his smile had widened during the scan. The nurse arrived shortly thereafter, an unintended complication. She had been taken earlier from a field hospital during a separate sweep, her role deemed menial enough to risk exposure. At first, we saw her only as another data point, but she reacted violently upon seeing the man restrained. "That's my husband," she shouted, struggling against the guards. The claim startled us, though we dismissed it as coincidence. Humans pair off frequently, sometimes with alarming impulsiveness. Yet the intensity in her eyes lingered with me. I maintained professionalism. "You will both be studied," I assured her. "There is no reason for distress." She spat words in response, harsh syllables about monsters and devils. I almost admired her defiance, though it was wasted. My guards silenced her with a neural clamp, and the chamber returned to quiet. Still, her insistence gnawed at the edges of my certainty. What were the odds of capturing not one, but two connected specimens? Perhaps fate sought to entertain itself at our expense. I told myself none of it mattered. The husband would remain sedated, the wife contained, and our research would proceed. We were the Galactic Armies. We did not falter before coincidences. Yet as I sealed the chamber, I caught one last look at the man's face. His eyes had opened a fraction, lids heavy, but unmistakably awake. They locked on mine with startling clarity, and for the briefest instant, I felt as though he were cataloging me, not the other way around. I told myself it was impossible. He could not be conscious under the weight of our paralytics. Still, when I recorded my next log, my voice faltered slightly. "Specimen remains docile. No threat detected." The words rang hollow even as I spoke them. In retrospect, perhaps the story truly began in that moment. Not with the assignment, not with the abduction, but with a smile that refused to fade and eyes that refused to close. A smile that seemed to whisper, "You think you are in control." A smile that made me wonder, for the first time, whether humans were truly the fools we believed. And though I forced myself to turn away, though I forced myself to write the official words of triumph, I knew with unsettling certainty that something had shifted. He was awake. He was watching. And he was waiting. The human opened her eyes with unnerving precision, as though responding to some silent alarm only she could hear. My crew leaned forward, expecting panic, thrashing, perhaps even tears. These were the ordinary reactions of captured primitives. Instead, she surveyed the chamber with the composure of an inspector arriving to critique our work. Her gaze moved across the walls, the instruments, the ceiling vents, and then, at last, to us. Not a scream, not even confusion, only a calm, calculating stare. I prepare my lecture, ready to explain her predicament in the clipped, condescending tones I reserve for subjects of study. Before I could begin, she spoke first. "Which one of you is in charge?" Her voice carried neither fear nor respect, only curiosity, as if she had boarded our vessel by invitation. My crew stiffened, unaccustomed to being interrogated by the specimen. I replied with the grandeur of command. "I'm the overseer. You will address me as—" She interrupted, tilting her head slightly, a faint smile curling her lips. "Not you. You're too eager to prove yourself. Probably middle management. I meant the real one." The chamber went silent. My subordinates looked at me, then at her, then quickly back at me again. It was absurd. How could she dissect our hierarchy within seconds? I masked my irritation with a dismissive chuckle. "Humans and their guesses. You know nothing of our order." She leaned back against the restraint field, utterly unbothered. "I know you're trying too hard. That one over there? He hasn't said a word. He's watching everyone else. That's the leader. You're the mouthpiece." The accused officer shifted uncomfortably. I felt heat rise in my thorax, a most undignified sensation. I told myself this was coincidence, instinct, luck, and yet her eyes glittered with a confidence that suggested otherwise. She continued before I could regain control. "So, where exactly am I? Low orbit? Maybe higher?" I felt the deceleration. Now it was my turn to stiffen. Few subjects notice transport at all. We employ sedation fields calibrated to suppress sensory retention. Yet she not only noticed, but measured. I forced my mandibles into what I hoped resembled amusement. "Your species is imaginative. Perhaps you should write fictions for your fellow primitives." Her smile widened. "I already did. In my head. On the way up. I mapped your ship's turns, the way it vibrated, even how long it coasted. Want to know what I figured out? I waved a clawed hand, feigning boredom, though my secondary hearts accelerated. Indulge us, primitive. She leaned forward just enough for the restraints to shimmer faintly. You burn fuel too fast when you climb. Your lateral stabilizers vibrate at low frequency, which means you've got a stress fracture somewhere. My guess. Port side. One of my engineers emitted a sharp hiss of alarm before remembering himself. I turned on him with a glare, and he silenced at once. Still, the damage was done. She had been correct. The nurse tilted her head again, studying us as though we were specimens. I stayed awake the whole time. You try to put me under, but your sedatives don't work right on people who've trained their breathing. My husband taught me. There was again that reference. Husband. My crew snickered nervously, though the laughter was thinner this time. I attempted to reassert dominance. You presume too much. You are in our custody, helpless. You cannot threaten us. Her eyes never left mine. Funny. That's exactly what my husband's targets thought too. A cold silence settled across the chamber. My mind scrambled for a proper retort, but before I found one, she asked almost casually, "How many of you are there on this ship?" I barked out a laugh sharper than intended, as if we would reveal such information. She shrugged. "I don't need you to. I've already counted footsteps, voices, reflections. 26. Maybe 27 if you're hiding someone in the lower decks." I glanced quickly at my crew. Their eyes betrayed unease. She was correct again. The nurse, this harmless specimen, was cataloging us. We initiated basic neurological scans. Probes hummed. Data streamed across the display. I expected typical human irregularities, emotional spikes, distracted cognition, illogical associations. What I saw instead unsettled me. Her neural pathways lit like constellations, not chaotic but patterned, recursive, deliberate. She was not thinking randomly. She was analyzing. Even under foreign probes, her mind remained organized, as if she anticipated the intrusion. She noticed our silence and smirked. "Don't like what you see? That's just the surface. Dig deeper, you'll find training. Military training. Not mine exactly, but I picked up a few things." "Military?" I sneered, clinging to arrogance. "You are a nurse." "Correct," she said smoothly. "A nurse married to someone who didn't just fight wars, but studied them. Counterintelligence. Patterns. Weaknesses." He shared a lot at the dinner table. I attempted sarcasm. "Your spouse entertained you with tales of conquest? How quaint." She leaned back once more, entirely at ease. "Not conquest. Survival. How to spot what others miss. How to smile while you dismantle an enemy." He taught me to breathe slowly, count vibrations, memorize exit routes. He also told me if I was ever taken, I should stay calm. People make mistakes when they think you're scared. But if you're calm, that makes them nervous. Nervous? Yes, the word rang true. My crew was shifting, their antennae twitching, claws restless. I ordered discipline, but my own voice carried strain. This was not proceeding as expected. Then came the moment that froze even me. She tilted her chin, met my eyes directly, and said, "I've already sent a message." The words were spoken softly, casually, as though mentioning she had mailed a letter. My subordinate barked laughter, brittle and desperate. "Impossible. She has no access to transmission arrays." The nurse smiled faintly. "Don't need access. You gave me everything. Those brain scans? Your beam touched me. Energy works both ways. Didn't anyone tell you that?" It was nonsense, surely. A primitive could not manipulate our instruments. And yet the display screens flickered for half a second. Just interference, I told myself. Just chance. She relaxed into the restraints, closing her eyes. "Don't worry. It's nothing dramatic. Just a signal. One word. Enough." "What word?" I demanded. She opened her eyes again, calm as ever. "Ready." The same word she had spoken in sleep. The word that had unsettled me before. Only this time, she delivered it not as dream speech, but as fact. My crew exchanged panicked glances. The chamber felt colder. I forced composure into my tone. "You cannot frighten us with primitive theatrics. You are one human. Alone. Powerless." She smiled, a smile without warmth. That's what you think. But you should know my husband doesn't miss. For the first time since our mission began, I felt fear creep beneath my arrogance. Her calm was no longer a curiosity. It was a threat. The observation chamber hummed softly, but to me it sounded like the drumbeat of an approaching storm. And though I told myself again and again that humans were primitive, weak, ridiculous, I could not silence the thought forming in my mind. Perhaps we had captured the wrong one. We began the examinations with renewed determination, eager to reassert control, to strip away the illusions this human so confidently projected. She remained strapped to the diagnostic platform, her posture infuriatingly relaxed, as though she were the one conducting the research. I ordered the cognitive resonance probes activated, their beams calibrated to map her neural structures in exquisite detail. I expected the usual scatter of impulses, the primitive circuitry of a mammal that survived more by accident than design. Instead, what appeared before us unsettled the entire chamber. Her brain was a constellation, not chaotic, not random, but an intricate web of recursive patterns, loops feeding into loops, a network that adjusted even as we scanned it. Normally, subjects display panic spikes, sharp bursts of activity when restraint or pain registers. She had none. Her mind flowed like a current, steady, deliberate, adaptive. I pretended indifference, yet my claws tapped the console with uncharacteristic restlessness. She watched us watching her, and then she laughed. Not hysterically, not nervously. A low, controlled chuckle that unsettled my crew. "You're disappointed, aren't you?" she said. "You want a chaos. Fear. That would have made you comfortable." I snapped silence. "You are the subject." She tilted her head. "Subjects talk. Otherwise, you're just staring at meat. And I know you prefer puzzles." Her confidence grated against my pride. I attempted sarcasm. "You believe yourself a puzzle? You are a nurse, a caretaker of the injured. Hardly a strategist." Her eyes gleamed. Caretakers see what fighters miss. We watch bodies fail. We notice patterns of collapse. My husband fought wars, yes, but I studied people after the fighting. That's why we worked well together. There it was again, her endless invocation of the husband. At first we mocked it, then we dismissed it, but now every mention carried weight. She spoke of him not with sentiment, but with quiet precision, as though describing a weapon. I began to suspect that she understood our growing unease and savored it. We pressed further into her mind. The scanners pulsed, attempting to categorize memory clusters, only to meet resistance. Not mechanical resistance, psychological. She fed the probes what she wanted them to see. Fragments of television shows, commercials for snack foods, absurd imagery of men wrestling reptiles. My technicians grew confused. "Is this cultural data?" one asked. "It appears nonsensical." The nurse grinned. "Welcome to reality TV." I muttered bitterly into my recorder. Human cognition polluted by worthless transmissions. Analysis compromised. But inwardly, I felt the sting of failure. She was manipulating the very tools designed to expose her. Then she quoted a phrase that baffled our translators. "Chuck Norris doesn't sleep. He waits." She winked. My crew glanced at one another uneasily, uncertain whether this Chuck Norris was a human leader, deity, or weapon. I attempted to dismiss it. Cultural gibberish. Yet I confess, I felt a flicker of unease. Her humor became sharper as the hours passed, always threaded with implication. She described our surveillance cameras before we mentioned them, noting which lenses trembled when adjusted. She tapped her foot in time with the hum of the engines, predicting when a vibration would shift as power rerouted. When one of my subordinates scolded her, she simply smiled. "If you think this is unsettling, you should see what he can do." Again the husband. Again the reminder that she was not isolated. The breakthrough, or collapse, depending on perspective, came when our neural imaging detected an anomaly, a resonance pattern that did not match human baselines. It was higher, a frequency that echoed through our equipment, bending data into shapes we could not parse. My technicians argued. One insisted it was malfunction, another insisted it was interference. I knew the truth we all feared. It was her. Somehow, impossibly, she was using her scans as tools. I confronted her directly. What are you doing? She opened her eyes lazily, as if waking from a nap. Just listening. To what? I demanded. To your ship, she said. Every pulse you run through me, I return. Every probe, every scan, you're showing me your systems. You don't even realize it, but you've been teaching me all night. The chamber descended into chaos. My crew barked at each other, checking consoles, recalibrating sensors. She remained still, serenely amused, like a predator waiting for the right moment. I slammed my claws against the railing. Enough games. You are in our power. You cannot send signals. You cannot escape. She regarded me with that same intolerable calm. You keep saying cannot. My husband told me something different. He said, everyone believes something is impossible until someone does it in front of them. Then it's obvious. The words landed like a blow. My arrogance wavered. I felt as though we were the ones restrained, pinned beneath her gaze. I turned away, desperate to reassert control. Begin the psychological interrogation protocols. Push until her composure cracks. The technician hesitated. Sir, if she is manipulating the system, do it, I roared. The machine roared to life, flooding her senses with stimuli. Dissonant sounds, flashing lights, invasive questions. A human subject should have convulsed, screamed, begged. She did none of these. Instead, she answered each query with unnerving precision, weaving fragments of truth with unsettling hints. When asked her occupation, she replied, healing wounds. When asked her skills, she said, watching people break. When asked her secrets, she smiled and whispered, I already told him everything. Whom? My technician demanded. She looked straight at me. My husband. I slammed my claw down again, furious. Your husband is irrelevant. She whispered, soft enough that we nearly missed it. Not to you. The lights flickered, just for an instant, but enough to send a ripple of panic through the chamber. My crew scrambled, insisting it was coincidence, a power flux. But I recognized the timing. It happened exactly when she spoke of him. I turned back to her, desperate to reclaim authority. What message did you send? What does ready mean? Her smile was faint, infuriating. It means you've already lost the first move. My breathing quickened, undignified. I wanted to dismiss her words as bravado, but the evidence pressed in from all sides. The flickers, the anomalies, the scans turned against us. She had not fought us, had not resisted physically. Instead, she had let us provide the tools for her counterattack. And through it all, she remained calm, almost gentle, as though explaining to children why their toys no longer worked. When the interrogation cycle ended, I dismissed the crew and remained alone in the chamber. She lay there, eyes closed, breathing steadily. I told myself she was contained, powerless. Yet every instinct warned me otherwise. She had changed the balance without lifting a finger. I recorded my log, my voice trembling despite my efforts. Subject displays abnormal psychological resilience, unanticipated analytical capacity, and potential for interference with ship systems. Immediate reevaluation required. I ended the entry, but not the doubt. For the first time in my career, I was not certain who was the prisoner. And when her eyes opened once more, meeting mine with that unshakable calm, I knew the real conflict had not yet begun. The first sign of collapse came not with fire or alarms, but with silence. Our ship, normally alive with the rhythm of systems humming and vents breathing, grew suddenly still, like a beast holding its breath. My crew exchanged anxious glances, their antennae twitching, their claws drumming nervously on consoles. I told them it was nothing, a recalibration of power relays, but even my voice betrayed unease. The nurse did not move. She sat upright within her restraints, serene, her eyes closed as though she were meditating. When the lights flickered again, in perfect time with her breathing, I realized the silence was not absence. It was control. I barked orders to stabilize the grid. My engineers scrambled, cursing in clipped dialects, but their hands hesitated, second-guessing themselves under her calm gaze. She opened her eyes and whispered, "You're listening now. Good. Her tone carried no triumph, only inevitability. I demanded, "What have you done?" She tilted her head. "I didn't do anything you didn't show me. You beamed data through me, remember? Your probes sang to me. I just sang back. Ridiculous. Impossible." And yet every panel on the bridge began responding as if hearing her voice rather than my commands. Doors sealed without input. Security drones powered down mid-flight. The ship's AI reported conflicting protocols. I shouted for manual overrides, but my words sounded hollow, even to myself. She had infected us with her composure, made panic feel like surrender. One of my lieutenants dared ask her directly, "What do you want?" She smiled faintly. "I don't want anything." But he does. The word hung heavy. Her husband, this sniper, this unseen predator. My crew whispered theories. Was he already aboard? Cloaked somewhere in the corridors? She offered no clarification, only leaned back as though savoring our dread. We tried confinement protocols, layering fields of containment over her body. The restraints glowed brighter, but her calm never faltered. She whispered, "You're wasting power, and you'll need that power very soon." I snapped at my subordinates to ignore her games. "We are the Galactic Armies," I declared, louder than necessary. "We have conquered empires. We will not tremble before one human and her absent mate." She regarded me as though I had proven her point. "That's your problem. You think conquest makes you strong. But strength isn't shouting. It's silence. It's patience. It's hitting one shot from half a mile away and waiting for the echo." The metaphor unsettled me more than any threat could have. My imagination conjured her husband crouched somewhere unseen, rain dripping from leaves, crosshairs steady. I tried to shake the image, but her words had already planted it inside me. Then the ship itself began betraying us. Bulkheads sealed randomly, isolating units of my crew. Communications fractured into echoes. The AI spoke in loops, its voice calm but corrupted. "Ready, ready, ready." Always the same word, repeating in tones that grew eerily human. My soldiers pounded on sealed doors, their discipline crumbling into panic. I confronted her again, my arrogance fraying. "How are you doing this?" She shrugged gently. "I'm not. He is. I just told him when." The declaration made my stomach coil. She was not the weapon. She was the signal. She had called him, or perhaps triggered something far larger. I demanded proof, demanded logic, but logic was dissolving around me. The stars outside flickered as though hidden shapes passed between us and the void. Were they cloaked satellites? Defense grids? I had no answer. She watched me struggle, and for the first time her expression softened. Almost pity. "You thought Earth was asleep. You thought we were too busy with fast food and sitcoms to notice. That's the camouflage. You see stupidity. We hide in it." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Perhaps we have been blind, fooled not by strength, but by weakness performed so convincingly that we believed it. A species that laughs at itself can also laugh while preparing a blade. The ship's power collapsed into emergency dimness. Red lights washed over us, painting my crew as silhouettes of panic. The nurse sat glowing faintly in the crimson haze, calm, untouchable. I shouted for the AI, but it only repeated the same line. "It doesn't miss." I turned to her one last time, my pride exhausted. "Why are you here? Why you and not him?" She met my gaze steadily. "Because I'm enough. Because he taught me how to be calm while you crumble. And because he's already aiming where it matters." The implication hollowed me. My claws trembled. This was not a prisoner. This was the opening move of a larger design. Earth had sent us a messenger disguised as a victim, and we had welcomed her into the heart of our systems. I dismissed the crew, unable to face their eyes. Alone with her, I spoke not as an overseer, but as a cornered being. "What happens now?" She closed her eyes. "That depends on whether you learn. My husband always said the difference between dead enemies and useful enemies is humility." Humility. The word tasted bitter. Yet even in bitterness, truth lingered. I understood then that the power I had flaunted was crumbling not through violence, but through the quiet, inexorable patience of a species we had ridiculed. The alarms blared one last time, then cut abruptly to silence. In that silence, I heard only my own breathing and the soft hum of systems no longer obeying me. She remained still, serene, victorious without lifting a finger. I recorded my final log with a voice stripped of arrogance. The human subject has demonstrated capacities far beyond projected models. Psychological dominance achieved without force. Strategic manipulation of systems confirmed. Recommendation: reevaluate classification of Earth. Species not primitive. Species dangerous. I paused, my claws shaking, and added words I never thought I would speak. Species to be respected. When I looked back at her, she was smiling again, that same calm smile that had haunted me from the beginning. "You'll live," she said softly. "That's the mercy. He wanted me to tell you that." For the first time, I felt gratitude toward a human. Gratitude and dread. I do not know what will come next. Perhaps war, perhaps diplomacy, perhaps something stranger. But one truth remains carved into me. Earth is not what we believed. Its people are not weak. And if they choose to fight, the universe will remember the day we mocked a nurse and discovered the sniper in her shadow.